Okay, so how do I feel today? I feel, I'm going to tell you what Clancy feels. Clancy feels put upon. If I ask Clancy, why do you feel put upon, Clancy will never answer because Clancy doesn't know why he feels put upon. He gets something in his head and then he goes on it. And usually, what he gets in his head is being disruptive to others. I said, follow your bliss. And then he says, okay. And then he does um, nasty things to me. If you'll remember, Clancy is a ghost who has poltergeist abilities. And he likes to play with my balls. And whenever I start reading something to learn something new, um, Clancy comes and stops me from doing it. How does he stop me from doing it? He makes it impossible to use my mind. He pollutes my mind with him. We kind of get to know what Clancy's like. When he gets this way, it's like a baby that's crying because it needs changing. For Clancy, what usually means is he wants me to do a video. Most of us want to kill Clancy because, a poltergeist that haunts you like this is just terribly unpleasant and makes you do things that you don't want to do. Basically, Clancy enslaves me. What can I do about it? I put a posting up looking for a bona fide um, exorcist. I didn't come across a bona fide exorcist. And in fact, my posting, the group that I posted it in, apparently I was banned from the group. How do I feel about that? Well, I didn't expect to find a bona fide exorcist that can actually get rid of poltergeist. Goats. Oh, he's the goat because his job is to be the villain, so I can be a hero. Why do I need to be a hero? Well, because on planet Earth there are so many things that are wrong with it. You're called a hero if you've come to be a change agent. So there must be villains here. And there were already villains here, but Clancy has decided rather than me going after the existing villains, he wants to be my primary villain. Did I want to be a hero in the first place? No. I don't even know why I'm on planet Earth. Another one of my friends, Jerry, who's kind of a metaphysical person, and he channels the Ascended Master Sananda from time to time. Jerry says he's come to the conclusion that if you are haunted by a ghost or you are tortured by a Nazi, at some level you have consented to this. He says that's the only conclusion he can come to. In other words, if you were a victim, you chose to be a victim. Um, Will is another metaphysical shaman kind of person. He would agree with this. He would say something in your vibration has consented to you being tortured. Clancy wants to know if me, Uncle, agrees with these things. Uncle is studying these things and has not really had enough information to say, I can really say this is my opinion. So far, what do I get? Mostly it's appeal to authority. So when I was in Psychology 101 at university many years ago, they talked about different ways that you could use as proof for your statement that you're stating. And the weakest one is appeal to someone else's authority. The example of an appeal to authority is climate change is real because the New York Times published a headline that said climate change is real. In other words, there's no proof there, and it's just, they're an authority. People know who the New York Times are. Does it mean that New York Times never did research on it for their headline? Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's basically New York Times said it, and I didn't copy in the article from the New York Times, and I posted that on Facebook, and then I left it at that. And this is the way quite often people do things. They basically said, "Well, I read it somewhere, and that's why I've got this opinion." Well, that's very poor. It's a very weak authority for your statement. On another tangent, the metaphysical teacher Chris Krepsick, also known as the Hooded Sage, thehoodedsage.com, he said that these things are called rigid intellectual opinions. And it's a very good teaching. In essence, everything is a rigid intellectual opinion because we live in, and this is not Krepchik, this is multitude of different people that, and is it true? I can't even tell you if it's true, but it seems to be true. We live in a relative world where you can't say this is an absolute truth. Clancy said water freezes at 0 Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not an absolute truth. It's only true if you have the right barometric pressure and the right altitude, sea level. So, and then is it always true? No, because if you put salt in the water, it's going to be a different temperature. If it's pure water, is that what it is? In essence, I think if it's pure water, what if you put a fish in it and it stirs up the water? Oh, that's going to make a difference because water that's moving, it's not going to freeze the same as still water. So you see, you can keep adding more and more factors to something. So it's not an absolute truth. And that's what a rigid intellectual opinion is. It's basically you saying the statement and saying, this is it, and not being open to someone like me saying, well, what about fish? And what about putting salt in the water? What about your altitude barometric pressure? Then I come off as a know it all, but in essence, I'm telling you the truth. Is it a rigid intellectual opinion? Maybe it's not rigid. Is it intellectual? It's kind of more experimental science. I think the whole point Clancy wants to make is be flexible. And it's cognitive dissonance related. In other words, you learn that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, and that's all you remember. And if someone says, well, my water froze at 1 degree Celsius, and you look at them and you say, it's impossible, you're an idiot. And then you walk away. Well, the real idiot is the one that just walked away because instead of questioning, you know, why do you say this? New York Times said it. That's it? Yeah, that's what they said. You had an appeal to authority and you've got. So that's not good enough. But, what I gave you were the different examples of what would change your water temperature freezing. Um, that's education. But someone with cognitive dissonance, they already took it for this is gospel truth. It's always 0 Celsius, always 32 degrees. So that's a rigid intellectual opinion. Because where are you holding it as an emotional truth? You might have a lot of emotion invested in it because, um, why? Um, That's cognitive dissonance. It's basically I'm having some facts that I was brainwashed into, or I didn't really understand fully and completely. I just memorized that line so I could pass the short answer test. And now someone's coming along and is, well, it's my ego that's really being upset. My ego, that is, that I am God. That's what ego basically is. It's edging God out. So ego says instead of there being something smart, the universe, let's say, super consciousness mind, it's me. And I just proved, Mr. Ego, that you don't know it all. And you're got a lot of pride in the fact that you think that you're God. And even when I prove to you that you're not God, you don't like me because I kind of knocked you down a few rungs on the ladder. And you basically, you want to be God. And if even if you're not, you're gonna keep saying, "I'm God, I'm God, I'm God." This is like the people that are in science of mind, religious science, a lot of New Age people. In other words, keep affirming that you are something that you're not, and sooner or later you will be. Is it smart? No, it makes you an idiot. You're better off saying, you know, I'm just an average human, and humans make mistakes. They make errors. I'm that kind of a person. I try and do the best I can. And if you know me or any other human, if you expect me to be 100% perfect and you're only going to pay me my paycheck if I'm 100% perfect, um, I'm not going to even try working for you because I know I'm not perfect. I'm starving today. Maybe another thing is I need a hot dog at lunch. um, I'll lie to you and tell you I'm going to do a perfect job for you because I need the money to buy the hot dog. Lo and behold, I managed to go through the morning without a mistake. Uh, can you pay me, like half a day's wages because I need to be at lunch? I need an advance on my salary. If you expect me to work all afternoon perfectly, I have to be fed. I have a physical body that needs food. I already worked for free for you for the morning. You expect me to work for free for you this afternoon? Everyone else is looking at you. And they've come to the conclusion that you're expecting all of us to be slaves for you. In other words, work for nothing. So that's the point. That's the point. If you are a enterprising person, someone said, you have to realize that if you expect to get good workers, the good workers basically have to come to work with the appropriate clothing. They have to have been fed. They had to have been watered. If you don't want them to stink, they needed to wash themselves. They needed to have a warm place to sleep last night because it's winter. And, you sort of have to have a peaceful, quiet place that you can sleep. Otherwise, you can't expect your worker to be perfect if they haven't slept. The workers, it just goes on and on. So, if you're going to have an enterprise and you're expecting that you're going to need help from other humans in order to do it, um, you have to see if your enterprise is going to throw off enough money that you can pay your employee, plural perhaps, enough so that they can afford all of these necessities of life. Because if they're not going to make enough money to get all these things that they have to buy in the common market, It's not the common market, it's in the marketplace. If they don't have enough money to buy the things in the marketplace of your city, then your workers are not going to be able to do the job. So if you can't forecast making enough money to pay your workers well, don't bother. You're just going to end up with a pain in the ass for you and for all the people that you are hiring. So if you're planning on sort of a shoestring business, you know, it doesn't make much money, don't bother. Keep going till you find something where you can make enough money so that you can do it. Why did we say common market? Clancy and Bear got rather annoyed at me that I'd go and stop everything and talk about common market. That's the way they are. They're bullies. And if they don't get their way, then they become disruptive and they grab my balls and send painful things to me. Basically, they're tyrants and they like to whip me because I'm their slave. Common market. Common market was what happened in Europe after World War II. A number of countries decided to lower their border walls, and eventually the common market became the European Economic Community, and then it became, you know, the thing that Great Britain just Brexited out of. What's the advantage of common market? Um, Someone says it lowers trade barriers. What's the good of lowering trade barriers? You should get lower priced goods because someone who can make the good cheaper will be able to get that cheaper good into your country for your people. What's the disadvantage of it? Well, you're no longer making it in your own country, which means people are going to lose jobs. If you never had the technology or the know-how to make this good, then what? Well, people are going to be buying this whiz-bang gadget made in China, and then they're not going to have money to buy the local produced goods. But, you know, if you go into a university economics class, they will say, um, economics proves that this is better. Is it true? Usually they say, well, empirical evidence is this, this, and this, and they'll give you real world examples, and then they'll draw some lines on the blackboard, and the lines will be what they were taught. A demand curve, for example. Is it true? Well, this is the problem with taking a course like economics. You don't really have a lot of time. In other words, you're sitting there and, you know, the professor puts the demand curve up on the blackboard, and then you got to take some time out with your pen to draw the demand curve on your piece of paper where you're taking a note. And in the meantime, the professor's talking the whole time that you're making notes. Somebody says, well, you could just rely on the textbook, but you really can't rely on the textbook because after a number of years of being a student, you know that often things are on the test that the professor tells you that aren't in the textbook, and vice versa. So you have to take notes and you have to have a textbook and you have to know them both inside and out. What's the problem? Well, while you're, you know, taking all this information down so that you can study for the test, all the good questions, like what I just said, is it accurate? You can't investigate. You can't because you know you're going to go home and you've got to look at your notes and study for tests and maybe other subjects. You got to read textbooks. You got to eat. You got to do laundry. You might have to go to the grocery store. Your friend got sick and you got to bring them chicken soup across town. You got to take a bus. So, you got limited time. It's already taken up. And, questioning what you're taught, it kind of fell off the list of things you could do. How long would it take to really test these economic theories that you're force fed because, the university says this is our official curriculum? Well, you could wait till you're done your economics degree and then test what you've got a degree in to see if it's really real or if you wasted 4 years of your life, paid all that money to take a university degree, and then when you actually got out in the real world, you found this doesn't work. You know, sure, I got a degree in economics, but my economics don't work. Or maybe I'm lucky and oh yeah, it really works. But that's what sort of happens because I call this waterboarding school. They keep force feeding you the information that you need for the test in order to get your degree, but you don't get any time to do any real world testing of what they're telling you. Maybe they'll give you one example, but you didn't get enough time to go for examples that don't follow the economic theory. Is it true that they exist? Um, how are you going to have a good intellectual opinion one way or another if you don't even look? And this is the education system that everyone says we got to pay the teachers more because they're on strike. And this is the kind of teaching that they do. And I'm saying, I don't really think this is the best way of educating children or adults. It's kind of like, this is the same system that you were brought up in, and this is the system being used on children today. Um, Whether you like it or not, your tax dollars are going to fund it. Whether you like it or not, the government is either going to give the teachers a raise or not. The teachers are complaining that they've got too many students and they don't want so many students in the classroom. I remember back to certain times when it was true because once you have even one disruptive student in the class, the other 30 students can't learn because the teacher can't teach. You basically need a big, strong security guard to remove the student who is causing a disruption. Why do I say you basically need? You need it. What's basic about it? A lot of times I find I'm put this is that's like an adverb. A lot of times I find I'm using adverbs and I don't know why because I hear myself saying you basically need, and what I really want to say is you need. Who is putting these adverbs into what I'm telling you? It ain't me. Quite often, I explained already that I've got disruptive ghosts that I can't get rid of that disrupt me, but there's also people who disrupt what I'm trying to tell you. Is it the ghosts? Let's assume it's someone else. It seems like my world is full of people throwing monkey wrenches at me. What's my point? How do I get rid of these disruptive people? How do I get rid of my disruptive ghost? I simply want to learn and I want to be able to see if what I've learned really works. It's very difficult. Do you find that this is like very similar for your life? Do you have a solution you can suggest for me? How to get rid of Clancy the ghost? Do I want to be a hero? Is that what I signed up for on planet Earth? Well, I was telling you about Jerry, who channels the Ascended Master Sananda in his belief that we have all agreed before we incarnated on planet Earth to everything that happens to us, good, bad, or indifferent. How do I test that? I can't test it. Someone said, well, in other videos, you said you can use muscle testing. Well, I used the muscle test, but now I've got Clancy and he's interfering with my body. So now I'm not getting the answers for muscle testing. Sometimes it gives me wrong ones and I can pick it up because I know they're wrong. And, so I can't rely on my muscle testing anymore. So then I have to go back and I have to ask, well, I keep saying Dr. David R. Hawkins of consciousness research used muscle testing for all the information he gathered. So, I mean, was he never interfered with by ghosts? I know that some of the things that he said, Jerry, for example, said Dr. Hawkins was wrong when it came to his evaluation of a symbol, an Egyptian symbol called an ankh. It's a cross with a little circle on the top. Clancy wants me to tell you it's like, it's not. Clancy's wrong. As usual, he's pretty much a stoop. But what else do I want to tell you? I just want to tell you that's all I got to tell you. Rigid intellectual opinions. Every opinion you have should not be rigid. You should be willing to throw it away. What if it's been working for you for a long time? You should still market this thing might need to be thrown away. Everything might need to be thrown away because you might transcend that particular truth that's worked for you for a long time because conditions changed. And you might still go to it first, but you should always say, um, you know, is it working for me? And always be open to the idea that our reality could change, and a straight line in my reality now that I draw with a pencil and a ruler might not work in a world where uh, you took magic mushrooms and your reality goes all like psychedelic and hallucinogenic, and a straight line that you take into the magic mushroom world looks like a curly cue. That's the only point. It's, if it's working in your reality, still be willing to say, yeah, conditions can change. Because I don't know if it was Buddha or it might have been an ancient Greek that said, the one thing that's sure is that this too will change. Thank you for watching. I'm Harley Davidson.